Hello, everyone. This is Kevin from the Aspen Public Library, welcoming you back to Discover Your World, Superlative Structures. This is the fourth and final part of the series where we're going to be looking at more enormous engineering projects. This time it's canals, dams, and other large pieces of human ingenuity that don't fit into any other category. And we're going to start off with an American site, the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam is a hydroelectric power plant on the border of Nevada and California and provides much of the power to those two states as well as Arizona. This dam is an enormous site, coming in at 726 feet tall. The volume of its reservoir is 2.5 million cubic meters of water. That's not a billion gallons, but it's close enough. It's very impressive. The Hoover Dam is certainly a very attractive piece of architecture. It is a very clean Art Deco style, but it wasn't always going to be that way. No, the original plans were quite fancy. There was going to be bas reliefs and sculptures and balustrades. It was going to be a very decadent project, but the designers began to think maybe a hydroelectric dam doesn't need to look like that, and they went with a much simpler look. Unfortunately, the construction of the Hoover Dam was not nearly as beautiful. Officially, 112 people died during the building of it, but that doesn't count the 42 people who supposedly died of pneumonia. This is strange because nobody else in the surrounding counties died of pneumonia. Today we think they died during the building itself from carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's over 150 people died to bring this structure into the world. Next up is the Itaipu Dam. This is another hydroelectric dam. This one you'll find on the border of Paraguay and Brazil on the Parana River. This dam holds the record for most power generated in a single year, although it's not officially the most powerful dam in the world. We'll get to that one soon. The Itaipu Dam is on the Parana River, a place where there used to be the world's largest waterfall by volume, but no more. The building of the dam inundated the area with water, and the waterfall was completely covered up. More so than that, 10,000 families were displaced as the reservoir covered up their homes. These types of dams tend to have that kind of effect on the area around them, but keep that number 10,000 in mind as we move on. The Three Gorges Dam is the largest dam in the world in terms of power generation, but as we said, it does not hold the record for most power generated in a single year. You'll find this dam along the Yangtze River, which is the third longest river in the world in Hubei, China. When this dam was built, 1.3 million people were displaced. That is a whole lot of people whose lives were uprooted by such a project. More so than that, tons of cultural and archaeological sites that in the area are now completely covered by water and inaccessible. With all that said, China still considers this project a great success. It provides much of the power to one of the most populated regions in the world, and it does so in an environmentally friendly way. If anyone says that there's easy solutions to hard environmental problems, they're wrong. The Three Gorges Dams illustrates the trade-offs that you have to make. Next up, we're going back to the United States, the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is a transportation canal that connects the Hudson River to Lake Erie. It was finished in 1825. The Erie Canal is 363 miles long, which, considering when it was built, was quite an impressive length. Historically, if you wanted to go to the Great Lakes by ship, you'd have to go down the St. Lawrence River, and that meant a trip to Canada. By building the Erie Canal, not only was the trip made much shorter, it completely avoided going to Canada, which meant not having to deal with a foreign country. The Erie Canal had a big effect on how cities in the United States grew. Places like Detroit and Chicago became major metropolises. The Panama Canal may be the most important canal ever built. The Panama Canal connects the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans together in Panama, Central America. The canal is only 51 miles long, but it made the trip by ship from New York to Los Angeles shorter by 8,000 miles. Along with the Intercontinental Railroad, the Panama Canal really sped up the growth of places like California. Getting the Panama Canal built was no easy task. The government of Panama did not want to let the United States in to build the canal. So what the United States did was back a revolution in the country to overthrow that government and put in a new government that would allow the United States to build that canal. Sometimes the history of engineering can be pretty messy. The Suez Canal is another of the world's most important canals. This one goes through Egypt, connects the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. It's longer than the Panama Canal at 120 miles. And unlike the Panama Canal, it doesn't have any locks or gates. It's all done by gravity. The Suez Canal was built by the British while Egypt was a British colony. After Egypt became independent, they ended up nationalizing the Suez Canal, meaning taking control of it for themselves. Now, the Suez Canal is a very important waterway, so this started a war. Israel, the UK, and France all declared war on Egypt over it. Fortunately for the newly independent Egypt, international pressure from the US and the USSR, and one of the few times they agreed on anything, forced France and the UK to abandon their war, leaving the Suez Canal as part of Egypt, in both location and ownership. Next up is Maracana Stadium, and this is definitely a piece of awesome engineering. You'll find this arena in Brazil, and it holds the record for most spectators at a single event. The capacity of the stadium during the 1950 World Cup was just shy of 200,000 people. It might be hard to imagine how many people that is, but it's actually kind of easy for me. I grew up in Yonkers, New York, who has a population of about 200,000 people. This is the fourth largest city in New York, which is the fourth largest state in the country. This is a city with 40 schools. So just imagine this. Think about everyone in your school, then multiply that by 40. Then add all of their families and all of their grandparents. And I think you get the idea. This is huge. The London sewer system is a modern medical marvel. Now, you may not think of a sewer system as being a medical invention, but it really was. London was one of the largest cities in the world in the mid-1800s, and they were having a lot of problems with disease because all of their waste was getting put into their river, the Thames, and it was getting everybody sick. Cholera was probably the biggest culprit here. At first, they thought the sickness was spreading through fumes, but no, it was the water. Building the sewer system, 13,000 miles of it, significantly improved the health of the people of London. Sewer systems around the world leave people to lead much healthier lives. This wasn't the world's first sanitation system. Civilizations as far back as the Indus Valley civilization had them, but there was never a project of this size before in history. The Delta Works is not one project, it's actually 14 projects in the country of the Netherlands. As you might be able to see from that little map there, the Netherlands has a very, very long coastline because of all those inlets. That makes it very hard to protect from flooding. So what the Delta Works does through a series of levees, dikes, locks, and dams is make the coastline artificially shorter. By doing that, there's less places to protect, which makes it much easier. The project of the Delta Works took a very long time, over 40 years, and it cost about $13 billion to do it, but the savings from having to protect the entire coastline and the damages from flooding is probably worth it. But unfortunately, it's not over. With climate changing happening and water levels potentially rising, there's a lot more work to be done. They project over the next 150 or so years they need to spend $144 billion more protecting the Netherlands. Hard work is never done. When we're talking about enormous engineering, we have to end with the Large Hadron Collider. This is the largest machine in history. It's not a machine like a computer. This is a 17-mile-long tunnel under France and Switzerland's border. They use this for physics. What this machine does is energize particles and make them move extremely quickly until they collide into each other. And watch what happens. That might not sound very useful to you, but to physicists, this helps them answer a lot of the most difficult questions, like the nature of dark matter and the existence of particles like the Higgs boson. This machine is able to energize particles with 4 times the energy as the last collider. As it turns out, when scientists work hard at discovering our world, they need to bring in some big equipment to do it. But would you look at that? We did it. We finished Superlative Structures. Hope you enjoyed learning about all these colossal constructions. This has been Kevin from the Ossining Public Library, reminding you to always be discovering your world. Bye-bye.